Of course, since you want scene 1 expanded into a longer, 1,000-word version, I'll make sure it stays light, heartwarming, and age-appropriate, like a wholesome small-town romance you might see in a family movie. I'll expand the fair setting, describe the characters' feelings, the community around them, and their first meeting in much more detail. Here's a safe extended version. The spring fair was the biggest event of the year in Willowbrook, a small town that rarely saw much excitement. The whole community came alive with bright streamers strung across the streets, stalls lining both sides of Main Street, and the sweet aroma of cotton candy, kettle corn, and roasted corn on the cob drifting on the evening air. Music floated from the bandstand, where a group of local teenagers were playing cheerful tunes on guitars and drums, filling the atmosphere with a sense of celebration. Children darted about with balloons clutched in their fists, parents mingled with neighbors, and laughter echoed under the glow of colorful lights. It was the kind of night that made everyone feel as though they belonged. Arav stood near the ring toss booth, his face flushed from both the warm air and the pressure of trying to win. His younger cousin tugged on his sleeve, urging him to keep trying so they could win the oversized teddy bear that towered above the rest of the prizes. Arav wasn't terrible at games, but he wasn't exactly skilled either. He tossed a ring, squinting hard, only to watch it clink against the bottle's neck and bounce away. The booth attendant chuckled good-naturedly. Arav's cousin groaned in disappointment. Arav rubbed the back of his neck and laughed nervously. Almost had it, he muttered, though they both knew that wasn't true. He grabbed another ring, determined to redeem himself. This time he aimed carefully, trying to steady his hand despite the music, the chatter, and the bursts of laughter surrounding him. He threw, and missed again. But this miss was different. Instead of bouncing harmlessly away, the ring flew wide, arced off the edge of the counter, and landed squarely in a wicker basket filled with freshly cut flowers. Arav froze in embarrassment. The flowers belonged to a girl standing just a few steps away, her long braids swinging gently as she turned to see what had landed in her basket. She was holding the basket against her hip, wearing a pale yellow dress patterned with tiny blue flowers, and she looked utterly surprised at the sudden interruption. Then, when she saw the sheepish expression on Arav's face, she laughed. Not in a mean way, but in a way that was warm and genuine, like she was letting him know it was okay. She reached into the basket, lifted the ring with delicate fingers, and held it out to him. "Looks like you won by accident," she teased, her eyes sparkling in the glow of the fair lights. Arav felt his cheeks burn. He took the ring back, trying not to drop it. "Or maybe I was just trying to get your attention," he blurted before he could stop himself. His cousin snickered beside him, clearly entertained by the exchange. The girl tilted her head, her smile growing a little wider. "Well, mission accomplished," she said lightly, shifting the basket back into place. The flowers gave off a gentle fragrance of roses and jasmine, and Arav noticed that some petals had brushed onto her sleeve. He wanted to say something clever in return, but words seemed to tangle in his throat. There was a pause, not awkward exactly, but full of curiosity. Arav found himself studying her in small, respectful glances, the way she carried herself, the quiet confidence in her smile, and the way she seemed so at ease in the middle of all the fair's chaos. She didn't seem bothered that a stranger had just accidentally tossed something into her basket. In fact, she seemed amused, as though she found joy in small surprises. "Do you always crash people's flowers when you play carnival games?" she asked, her voice playful. "Only when I'm trying to impress someone," Arav replied, surprising himself with his honesty. His cousin nudged him with a grin. Arav gave a half shrug, as though it didn't matter, but his heart was pounding faster than the drumbeats echoing from the bandstand. The girl laughed again. "Well, I guess you'll have to work on your aim. But it was pretty original." Her eyes glinted with mischief, but also kindness, the kind that made Arav feel like maybe this wasn't a total disaster after all. Just then, the band struck up a faster song, and the crowd around them grew thicker as families shuffled closer to the music. The fair lights shimmered overhead, casting everything in hues of gold and pink. Arav's cousin tugged on his sleeve again, impatient for him to keep playing, but Arav was too focused on the stranger with the flower basket. He didn't want the moment to end just yet. He cleared his throat. "I'm Arav," he said, finally finding his courage. "And I promise I'm not usually this clumsy." She shifted her basket slightly, then gave a small, graceful nod. "Mira," she replied, "and for what it's worth, I thought it was kind of funny." Her voice carried a warmth that lingered even after the words left her lips. For a moment, the noise of the fair seemed to fade, and all Arav could think about was how extraordinary it felt to meet someone like her by pure chance. He knew people always talked about Willowbrook being too small for surprises, but here was a surprise he hadn't seen coming at all. He couldn't help wondering if this was the beginning of something he'd look back on years later as the night everything changed. Mira glanced at the teddy bears dangling above the booth and then back at him. "So, are you going to try again? Or are you retiring from ring toss for the night?" Arav laughed, shaking his head. "I think I'll stop while I'm ahead. At least now I've got a decent story to tell." He gestured toward her basket. "Though I'm sorry if I crushed any of your flowers." She peeked into the basket and then shook her head with a grin. "They survived, and maybe they like adventures, too." They both chuckled softly, and in that shared moment, something small but meaningful settled between them, an understanding, a spark, the kind of connection that made the evening glow even brighter. The fair continued around them, full of lights and music and the energy of the whole town, but for Arav, it already felt like the most memorable night of his life. The evening quiet of Willowbrook had a magic of its own. Once the fair wound down and the cheerful noise of the crowd drifted back toward Main Street, the riverbank became a calmer world. Lanterns strung along the bridge flickered faintly, their reflections dancing across the surface of the water. The air was cooler here, scented with grass and the faint sweetness of cotton candy someone had dropped earlier. Arav and Mira strolled side by side, their steps unhurried, as though both of them had silently agreed that there was no need to rush through this moment. Neither spoke at first. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, it was thoughtful, filled with the soft murmur of the river and the occasional chirp of crickets. Mira shifted her flower basket to the crook of her arm, and Arav glanced at it, smiling. The memory of the ring toss accident lingered, and every time it crossed his mind, he fought back a laugh. She seemed to sense what he was thinking, because her lips curved into a small grin too, as though she could read his thoughts without a word being spoken. After a while, she broke the quiet. "You know, I think this is my favorite part of the fair," she said. "When the noise fades and everything feels calm again. It's like the town finally lets out a sigh." Her voice was soft, carrying easily in the stillness. Arav nodded. "Yeah, it feels honest, like all the colors and the music are just a mask, and this," he gestured to the river and the glow of fireflies that hovered nearby. "This is what Willowbrook is really like. Simple, but kind of beautiful." She looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "That's a nice way to put it. You must be good with words." He chuckled quietly. "I try. I've been learning guitar for a few years, writing songs here and there. Don't worry, they're not any good yet. But sometimes it feels like the only way I can explain what's in my head is through lyrics." Her eyes lit up with curiosity. "So, you're a musician?" He shook his head quickly. "Not officially. Just someone who plays chords in his room and dreams a little too much." There was a self-deprecating note in his voice, but he smiled anyway. Mira tilted her head as she listened. "I don't think dreaming too much is a bad thing. I dream all the time, actually. About opening a bakery one day. Small, but cozy. The kind of place where people can stop in for warm bread or sit with a slice of cake when they're having a bad day. I can already picture the smell of cinnamon in the mornings." Arav glanced at her, impressed by the way her eyes glowed when she described it. He could almost imagine it too, a little bakery tucked on the corner of town, with sunlight streaming through the windows and people gathering to enjoy something she had created. "That sounds amazing," he said earnestly. "I think the town would love it. Especially if you bring that flower basket to decorate the tables." She laughed softly. "Maybe. Or maybe the flowers will just keep following me around, thanks to your ring toss skills." The two of them smiled at each other, and for a moment they simply kept walking, listening to the sound of the river brushing against the stones. The night sky above them was scattered with stars, clear and bright in a way only small town skies could be. Fireflies drifted lazily through the grass, tiny sparks of light weaving between their footsteps. Arav caught himself thinking that it looked almost like magic, like the universe itself had decorated this path for them. He cleared his throat gently. "So, what would your bakery be called? She looked ahead, thinking. I haven't settled on anything yet. Names feel important. I want it to be something simple, something that makes people smile. She glanced at him. What about you? If you ever released your songs, what would you call your first album? Arav chuckled, shaking his head. You don't want to know. It would be something embarrassing, like, Songs from a Messy Room. Mira burst out laughing, the sound echoing faintly across the water. That's actually kind of charming, she said once she caught her breath. It sounds real, like you're not pretending to be perfect. He smiled at her reaction, feeling a little lighter, as though her laughter had taken away some of his nervousness. They walked a little further, passing under a willow tree whose branches brushed low over the ground. Arav reached out and held one of the hanging strands between his fingers before letting it go. I like this spot, he said. It feels hidden, but not lonely. Mira nodded in agreement. She placed her basket on the grass for a moment and sat down near the edge of the bank. Arav hesitated, then sat a comfortable distance away. The grass was cool, and the sounds of the fair were distant now, more memory than reality. For a while they simply watched the water ripple in the moonlight, each lost in thought. Finally, Mira said quietly, do you ever feel like there's more out there waiting for you? Beyond the town, beyond everything you already know. Arav considered the question. Yeah, he admitted, I think about that all the time. Sometimes I feel guilty, like I shouldn't want to leave, because this town has been good to me. But I also wonder what it would be like to see the world, to meet people who don't already know every detail of my life. She nodded slowly. I feel that too, but maybe leaving isn't the only way. Maybe you can bring something new here. Like music, or like a bakery. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, something fragile but promising. Neither of them needed to explain that they had just shared something important, an understanding, a belief that they weren't alone in wanting more than what everyone else expected. For two people who had only just met, it felt strangely significant. The sound of distant fireworks startled them both. The fair must have been ending with a small display. Faint colors bloomed in the sky above the trees, reflecting in the river. They turned to watch, the bursts of red and gold illuminating their faces for just a few seconds at a time. Arav thought that no firework could really match the brightness of the evening they were already having, but he kept that thought to himself, tucking it away like a secret. When the last firework faded, the quiet returned. Mira picked up her basket, dusting off the grass. I should probably head back, she said softly. But this walk, I'm glad we took it. Me too, Arav replied, standing up. He felt a little braver now, enough to add, maybe we can talk again. About songs, or bakeries, or anything really. Mira smiled, her expression warm in the dim light. I'd like that. They walked back toward the fairgrounds together, side by side once again, the sounds of their footsteps mingling with the soft whispers of the river. Neither of them knew exactly what this night meant or where it would lead, but both felt that something had begun. Something quiet and beautiful, like the glow of fireflies rising along the path.